我宣布
The 10,150th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. I request the protocol officer to escort His Excellency Mr. Denis Becirovic, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to his seat at the Council table. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Schmidt to participate in this meeting. I give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we wish to set on the record the fact that we disagree with the presence in this meeting of Mr. Christian Schmidt, especially in the capacity of the so-called High Representative. We wish to recall the fact that the United Nations Security Council did not approve him in any duty, and nor did the Security Council vest him with any authority or competency. We understand that the question of BNH has been on the Security Council under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, and there has been a long-standing practice of approval of high representatives. Christian Schmidt, this did not apply to Christian Schmidt. In light of the above, we wish to underscore the fact that Schmidt never had, nor does he currently have the right to speak on behalf of the international community, nor to submit any documents whatsoever to the Security Council. We call for his statement to be viewed as the personal view of a citizen of Germany. We wish also to draw attention to the statement of Mr. Schmidt about him stepping down from his post, a post which he never officially held. He simply usurped the position. However, in light of these statements, his presence today at the Security Council is something which is completely nonsensical. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I've taken note of the statement made by the Russian Federation. I invite Mr. Christian Schmidt to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I also invite His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of Item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Schmidt.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, esteemed Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is my duty, out of the Dayton General Framework Agreement for Peace, to give this Honorable Council a report about the current development in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I will underline that the country is moving along a narrowing path, one that leads either towards institutional sustainability and consolidation, economic revitalization, the rule of law and democratic governance standards, or towards further stagnation driven by a political obstruction and a gradual deconstruction of state institutions. While the overall security situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains stable, potentially disruptive tensions remain an issue of concern. EUFOR's presence remains both necessary and reassuring. As a matter of principle, the Dayton institutions, the OHR and EUFOR, remain in place, and it is up to the domestic actors to demonstrate political responsibility and local ownership. At the same time, stability should not be mistaken for institutional health. Even with no imminent security crisis, there is an ongoing crisis of institutional functionality and political responsibility. This affects the quality of governance, economic development, and the daily lives of citizens. More concerningly, we are witnessing deliberate attempts to deconstruct state-level institutions by blocking them and preventing them from performing the responsibilities they were created for. Against this backdrop, my report reflects what I consider to be the 4 priorities for the current year. First, the preservation of the institutional order established under the Dayton Peace Agreement. Second, restoration of institutional functionality. Third, a resolution of the issue of apportionment of state property. And fourth, ensuring the timely introduction of election technologies ahead of the general elections in October 26. The Dayton Peace Agreement brought peace to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this remains valid today. Yet, the constitutional order continues to be weakened from within. Ongoing disagreements over the interpretation and implementation of Dayton, disrespect for the ruling of the highest court of the country, and at times deliberate blockages continue to affect state institutions, gradually undermining their functionality to the point where the narrative of BIH not being viable becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The progressive deconstruction of state institutions and functions is further exacerbated by a climate of distrust driven by divisive and degrading narratives that erode the spirit of cooperation essential for a functioning state. In this context, it is deeply concerning that narratives portraying Bosnia and Herzegovina as a stage for a so-called clash of civilizations, along with renewed references to vague and external influences, have re-emerged during the reporting period. Such narratives distort reality. They heighten fear rather than offer solutions for progress and reconciliation. Yes, there remains a lot to do in this context. As well, it remains important to not allow extremist or terrorist groups to gain ground. Steps taken by the leadership of the Republika Srpska entity in October 25 helped break the political deadlock and enable renewed engagement with the international community. However, this apparent de-escalation did not lead to a breakthrough. On the contrary, the leadership of Republika Srpska continues to question the territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina and to undermine stability and reform prospects. This return to more explicit secessionist themes was recently illustrated by the statements made by Mr. Dodik in the context of the Donja Gradina commemoration. The oscillation between engagement and confrontation undermines trust and hinders any genuine political progress. Furthermore, the persistent denial of the multi-ethnic character of the entities, particularly within Republika Srpska, has evolved into a systemic exclusion. The structural discrimination not only violates the fundamental rights of non-majority citizens, but effectively hinders the sustainable return of refugees envisioned under Annex 7 of the General Framework Agreement on Peace for Bosnia-Herzegovina. The letter sent to you by the Republika Srpska Vice President and a group of other Bosniak political representatives outlines a range of institutional and other questions directed in their report as they're reporting against members of minority constituent peoples in the entity from biased public employment practices, implementation of non-inclusive education, and prevention of free expression of different identity to open glorification of war criminals. Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of democratic legitimacy. The introduction of safeguard mechanisms to protect election integrity is essential if the October 26 general elections are to command public confidence and provide a credible accountability mechanism. The absence of such accountability is one of the reasons for poor governance and state capture. In close consultation with the member states of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council, the OSCE, the European Union, the United States, I could prepare this last month the necessary legal and budgetary conditions to provide the opportunity for Bosnia and Herzegovina's election authorities to increase the integrity and transparency of the October 26 elections. I am proud of these achievements. I urge us all not to allow destructive circles to call them into question. On the issue of state property, my report reiterates the continued lack of progress. This unresolved question has become a major impediment to economic development, infrastructure, investment, and long-term growth. I remain firmly convinced that creating the legal and political conditions for the use of state property for protection projects in the public interest is urgent. Opening the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the country as a whole to domestic and foreign investment would not only stimulate economic activity, but also help shift the prevailing political dynamic in a positive direction. I observe that there is a new dynamic stemming out from the decision to construct the so-called Southern Interconnector pipeline designed to deliver liquefied natural gas from Croatia's terminal Kirk to Bosnia and Herzegovina. So far, Bosnia and Herzegovina's economy has been struggling with deep structural weaknesses, political uncertainty, and a persistent demographic decline, which election-driven spending likely to keep public finances under pressure in the foreseeable future. Structural blocking of state institutions to take the offers of European Union to enhance integration is a remarkable political attitude directed at the end against the interest of the state and its citizens. This is particularly concerning as economic stagnation fuels political radicalization. By contrast, economic development strengthens social cohesion and institutional credibility. It should therefore be a priority for responsible political actors. Needless to say, I support efforts undertaken by member states of the Peace Implementation Council with a view to providing sustainable solutions to this issue in line with the Constitution. The media freedom environment, particularly in Republika Srpska, remains a concern. Civil society and independent media are facing a constrained operational environment. These negative developments are obstructing the effective exercise of freedom of expression in the entity. In this last period, the international community has focused on domestic ownership. Regrettably, this approach has not been conducive to genuine engagement and constructive dialogue by domestic political leaders. This situation has obstructed tangible progress, including on Bosnia and Herzegovina's integration path to the European Union. Domestic ownership cannot mean institutional neglect. Responsibility must be exercised, not merely asserted. Let me, as somebody who has been historically socialized by the important experience of the Nuremberg trials, the rule of law can prevail, commend the healing power of the ICTY up to today. There has to be a focus on undecided cases of war crimes, some of them at courts in the region. On the one hand, Bosnia and Herzegovina continues to experience a gradual erosion of institutional cohesion. On the other, there is clear evidence of social resilience, with citizens often succeeding in moving the country forward. Citizens continue to live together without broad-based animosity. However, deploying nationalism for political gains fuels emotion and creates fertile ground for division. While extreme voices remain loud, they do not reflect broader society. With continued support from the international community, citizens, civil society organizations, and responsible politicians can become the catalyst Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to break out of stagnation. There's an urgent need to provide hope for all, a perspective for a common prosperous future, moving behind dividing lines. In 1995, this council helped ending a devastating war. In 2026, the responsibility of the international community might be more subtle, but it's not less important. Peace, democracy, and constitutional order for Bosnia and Herzegovina should not be left to erode gradually and deliberately. On the contrary, the state institutional structure established under the Dayton Peace Agreement should be preserved and strengthened in a sustainable and irreversible manner. This will in turn also provide the basis for Bosnia-Herzegovina's Euro-Atlantic integration. Let me conclude with a point I raise here on my own behalf. Under the prevailing circumstances, I took my personal decision to end my mandate as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina based on the Dayton General Agreement for Peace and several United Nations Security Council's resolution, and which I have received from the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council in 2021. As a result of this decision, I have already put the issue of identifying a successor on the agenda of the next meeting of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council beginning June. The process to appoint my successor has begun, and I plan to depart my role in June. Since today, I was foreseeably presenting for the last time a report in this council. Mr. President, I would like to thank the distinguished delegates and their countries for their commitment to the implementation of a Dayton Peace Agreement. It is high time to substantially complete its implementation to bring the office of the High Representative to a gradual phasing out according to the 5+2 agenda. Thank you.
感谢施密特。
I thank Mr. Schmidt for his briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I thank High Representative Christian Schmidt for his briefing today, and I welcome the participation of Mr. Denis Bečirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, at our meeting, as well as the representatives of the EU, Serbia and Croatia. President, the United Kingdom thanks High Representative Schmidt for his dedicated service supporting peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and for his contribution to implementing the Dayton Peace Agreement. The Peace Implementation Council will now take forward the selection and appointment of a successor. We reiterate our support for a fully empowered High Representative as the cornerstone of civilian implementation of Dayton. We remain deeply concerned by the political situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As the report sets out, some political actors continue to subvert democratic processes. They are obstructing legislative activity and abusing constitutional safeguards, stalling progress on Euro-Atlantic integration and the 5+2 agenda, including state property. Recent elections in Republika Srpska were marked by significant electoral fraud. With democracy and rule of law under attack, international support remains vital. We reiterate the importance of constitutional reform that reflects the needs of all citizens and implements European Court of Human Rights jurisprudence. In this election year, we underline the importance of strengthening democratic resilience. We support the rollout of election technology as a practical step to reduce fraud and rebuild public confidence in elections. Bosnia and Herzegovina's future cannot be held hostage by divisive politics. Various players are stoking ethnic and religious tensions as a way of advancing their pernicious agendas and stirring up more tension between all of Bosnia and Herzegovina's communities. Divisive rhetoric, including calls for secession or a third entity, is anti-Dayton and risks peace and stability. We call on all parties to reject all narratives which deepen divisions and misrepresent the country's challenges. President, Dayton obliges all parties to respect the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Full respect for Dayton remains essential. The report and ongoing political challenges underline why the High Representative, including the use of executive powers where necessary, remains vital. The Security Council endorsed Dayton under Chapter 7, including the High Representative, who is appointed by the Peace Implementation Council. While the United Kingdom supports progress on the 5+2 agenda, those conditions have not yet been met. Until they are, the role of the High Representative remains essential to safeguarding Dayton and ensuring peace and stability. We call once again on Bosnia and Herzegovina's politicians to respect Dayton and the constitutional order, focus on practical reforms in the interests of all citizens, and for the international community to support these efforts. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. I give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, before touching upon the agenda item, I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate the People's Republic of China on its accession to the presidency of the Security Council this month of May, and we wish them every success in their mandate. We wish to reaffirm our full commitment to working alongside all of the members of the Security Council, working towards the promotion of international peace and security in accordance with the purposes and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. We wish to thank Mr. Christian Schmidt, High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, for his briefing. Mr. President, my delegation wishes to thank you for having convened this meeting dedicated to the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we wish to extend our gratitude to other speakers for their briefing, for their information about the developments of the situation in the country. The ongoing nature of the biannual debates at the Security Council serves as a reminder of the fact that maintenance of peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in any other country or region in the world remains a collective responsibility. My country takes note of the report that has been submitted, as well as the recent communications addressed to the Security Council on the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Dayton Agreement. Mr. President, the DRC has been following with great concern and observing the indications of fragility that have been seen in Bosnia and Herzegovina. These include persistent political tensions, divisive rhetoric, allegations of discrimination, as well as any other moves that are liable to undermine the established constitutional order. The DRC has duly taken note of the concerns that were voiced and set out in the letters dating 11 February and 8 May 2026 concerning secessionist moves attributed to certain leaders of Republika Srpska, as well as the risks of these dynamics generating when it comes to constitutional order, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We wish in this regard to recall the fact that the Dayton Accords remains the very bedrock for peace, institutional stability, and peaceful coexistence amongst the constituent peoples of BNH. 30 years after agreement on Dayton, the Dayton Accord remains a critical framework that needs to be safeguarded and implemented in good faith. For my delegation, any attempt to redraw borders, any attempt to weaken constitutional institutions or to advance unilateral solutions is a risk factor when it comes to peace and stability. The Security Council, therefore, needs to remain vigilant and fully engaged in a preventive approach. Mr. President, the DRC recalls the fact that political leaders at all levels must exercise restraint and responsibility. They need to refrain from any incendiary rhetoric, any hate speech, any unilateral initiatives, or any action that is liable to weaken national cohesion or regional stability. We encourage all parties to embrace inclusive dialogue, consensus building, and peaceful means in accordance with the Dayton Accords, the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the decisions of the relevant institutions, and international law. The DRC believes that lasting peace in BNH cannot merely be limited to an absence of armed conflict. Lasting peace requires respect for rule of law, regular operations of institutions, and the equal protection of all citizens, reconciliation, and trust amongst the communities. Mr. President, the DRC underscores the importance of peaceful coexistence amongst the various communities of BNH. Ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity of the country needs to remain a protected asset, an asset protected by institutions and not a divisive liability. Furthermore, we recall that the duty to remember, the duty of justice and reconciliation are indispensable when it comes to peace building. Denialist rhetoric, glorification of grave crimes that have been recognized by competent jurisdictions, and the instrumentalization of identities inevitably rekindles tensions and delays the building of a shared future. In that vein, public institutions, educational systems, media, outlets, and political leaders need to all contribute to bring communities closer together and to promote tolerance and social cohesion building. We take note of the role played by EUFOR Althea, which has been authorized by the Security Council in the maintenance of a secure and safe environment in BNH. We encourage the pursuit of efforts to safeguard stability in the country and the Western Balkans region. My country also encourages regional cooperation, good neighborly relations, and constructive dialogue in a manner that respects the sovereignty and political independence of each state. Mr. President, the DRC reaffirms our steadfast commitment to the purposes and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, particularly respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of states, as well as peaceful dispute resolution. It is in this spirit that we reiterate our support for the sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, and political independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina within its internationally recognized borders. Moreover, we call upon all parties to demonstrate responsibility, to engage in dialogue, and to exercise restraint, and to facilitate peaceful coexistence. To conclude, the Democratic Republic of the Congo reaffirms the fact that prevention remains one of the vital roles played by the Security Council. In that vein, my country will continue to support any balanced initiative which is geared towards preserving the sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, constitutional order, institutional stability, reconciliation, and lasting peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Mr. President, we want to thank High Representative Schmidt for his report and for nearly 5 years of dedicated service. Those 5 years have built institutions, advanced prosperity, and brought us closer than ever before to fulfilling the promise of the Dayton Accords. Today, the threat of secessionist laws in the Republika Srpska has been withdrawn, and the authority of the Constitutional Court has been recognized. The Southern Interconnector Project offers the prospect of prosperity for all communities if their leaders can work together. Milorad Dodik has left public office. And this October, voters in Bosnia and Herzegovina will go to the polls under a new electoral law to elect new leadership. The international mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina is moving to a new stage, and we should all recognize High Representative Schmidt's role in completing this phase of the international mission. We understand that success can be bittersweet. The OHR was never intended to be permanent. Success for a High Representative means leaving a successor with a far more limited set of responsibilities. Building on this foundation, Christian Schmidt helped establish the institutions for a sovereign Bosnia. The next High Representative's task will be to transfer responsibility for running and maintaining those institutions to local leaders. One day, there will no longer be a need for such a role. To complete that task, the next High Representative must enjoy the trust of all communities in Bosnia. Most importantly, that person must be committed to a sovereign Bosnia and Herzegovina. A sovereign Bosnia and Herzegovina is one which decisions are made by local leaders, driving pragmatic, locally owned solutions, facilitated by international voices rather than dictated by them. In this spirit of transition, as we look towards the Peace Implementation Council's meeting in June and consider candidates and proposals for the future of the international presence, we will evaluate candidates based on whether they meet this standard of trust and impartiality. With this in mind, we hope to work with all of you, but we also have our own candidates in mind if need be. Time is short. It is imperative that a successor be in place by the end of June to ensure stability heading into the fall election campaign. The United States stands ready to support this leadership during the transition and to oppose those who threaten stability or the fair conduct of elections. This is not a victory or defeat for any party or group in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but a recognition of the completion of one phase of the international presence. Our message to Bosnia and Herzegovina's leaders is this: focus on practical cooperation and responsible governance, and work with each other to advance prosperity for all your citizens. Do not think of change as a zero-sum game, but as an opportunity to show the world what you can accomplish. To our international partners, trust in the wisdom of the principle of self-government, and join us in working to support true sovereignty for all the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And to Christian Schmidt, thank you, sir, for your service and your dedication to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's been a pleasure and an honor to get to know you. Thank you, Mr. President.
感谢。
I thank the representative of the United States. I give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I join in congratulating you for assuming the presidency of the Council. And please be assured of Liberia's continued support. Liberia thanks Mr. Christian Schmidt for his important briefing and the quality of his service. To the chair of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, please accept our welcome. Mr. President, Excellencies, Liberia approaches this debate not as a distant observer, but as a country acquainted with the long labor of rebuilding a fractured state. We know that wars do not end when guns fall silent. They end when institutions become stronger than grievances, when citizenship becomes more powerful than ethnicity, and wars end when political leaders learn that restraint is also a form of patriotism. Bosnia and Herzegovina stands at a consequential moment. Nearly 3 decades after Dayton, the country continues to navigate unresolved constitutional questions, competing political visions, and recurring tensions over the distribution of authority. Recent developments remind us that peace agreements are not self-sustaining documents. They survive only when political actors choose preservation over provocation. Liberia, therefore, wishes to underscore the following points. First, democratic processes must remain instruments of legitimacy, not rehearsals for divisions. The recent snap presidential election in Republika Srpska, together with the subsequent annulment of results in several polling stations due to reported irregularities, reflects both the resilience and fragility of democratic institutions. Elections must never become contests over who can most effectively inflame public fear. The true strength of democracy is measured not by victory margins, but by the confidence of those who lose. As Bosnia and Herzegovina approaches elections in October, Liberia urges all political leaders to reject inflammatory rhetoric and recommit themselves to constitutional dialogue and peaceful political competition. History teaches a very simple but unforgiving lesson. Words spoken recklessly in divided societies rarely will remain only words. Second, civic space and human rights protections must be preserved with vigilance. Societies emerging from conflict cannot afford the erosion of independent media, civil society, or institutions of accountability. When scrutiny is treated as hostility, democratic decline often follows quietly before it arrives dramatically. A state does not become weaker because citizens ask questions. It becomes weaker when citizens become afraid to ask them. Liberia, therefore, calls for the protection of human rights defenders, minority communities, and independent institutions alongside stronger efforts to confront hate speech and incitement before they calcify into political culture. Third, Liberia recognizes the continuing relevance of the office of the High Representative under the Dayton framework. We acknowledge that perspectives differ within this council. Yet, the central question should not be whether international mechanisms are ideal, but whether conditions presently exist for their safe and responsible withdrawal. Peace implementation mechanisms are truly not invitations to dependency. What they are really are guardrails against aggression, or rather, regression. So long as core provision of the peace agreement remain contested, stabilizing structures retain practical importance. Liberia, once again, encourages constructive engagement with the High Representative and continued progress toward fulfillment of the 5+2 agenda. Fourth, the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and multi-ethnic character of Bosnia and Herzegovina are not matters for selective interpretation. The Dayton Peace Agreement ended one of the darkest chapters in modern European history because it established a framework within which coexistence became possible again. No society remains stable when constitutional order becomes conditional upon political convenience. Liberia urges all actors, domestic and external, to refrain from conduct that could embolden separatist tendencies or deepen ethnic polarization. Political ambition must never be allowed to outrun the requirements of peace. Fifth, the socio-economic dimension deserves far greater attention in conversations about stability and security in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Persistent political analysis carries human consequences. Young people leave. We've seen that in my country. Public trust erodes. Communities become vulnerable to cynicism and extremism. A generation without economic hope becomes fertile ground for political instability. Liberia, therefore, encourages sustained support for reforms that strengthen institutions, widen opportunity, reduce discrimination, and restore public confidence in governance. Mr. President, Liberia's own history has taught us that reconciliation is not the absence of disagreement. It is the collective decision that disagreement will no longer be settled through national ruptures. Peace survives where institutions are trusted, where rights are protected without qualification, and where leaders understand that national unity is not inherited automatically by states emerging from conflict. It must be renewed continuously through political wisdom and civic courage. To conclude, Mr. President, Bosnia and Herzegovina has come too far and sacrificed too much for the architecture of peace to be weakened by recurring cycles of confrontation. Liberia, therefore, calls on all political leaders to reaffirm through both word and conduct their commitment to constitutional order, non-violence, inter-ethnic trust, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. For in the end, the durability of peace depends less on the text of the agreements than on the character of those entrusted to uphold them. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the representative of Liberia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, President. I thank High Representative Schmidt for his briefing. We appreciate the efforts made by the Office of the High Representative over the years in the implementation of the civilian aspects of the peace settlement in line with Annex 10 of the Dayton Peace Accord. We take note of Mr. Schmidt's intention to resign his office, and we hope that the relevant parties would move swiftly and without delay to appoint a successor to facilitate and enable the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina to complete the 5+2 agenda. I also welcome His Excellency Mr. Denis Bečirović, Chairperson of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in today's meeting, and I also welcome the participation of Croatia, Serbia, and the European Union. President, at the outset, I would like to reiterate Pakistan's unwavering support for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity of Bosnia and Herzegovina in line with the UN Charter. Lately, the political landscape in Bosnia and Herzegovina has undergone rapid changes that do not augur well for the overall political environment in the country, particularly for its fragile inter-ethnic balance. Regrettably, the political tensions have continued to affect the governance setup, with institutional paralysis exacerbating the administrative, legislative, and constitutional challenges. While the security situation in the country remains stable, certain developments, especially the incessant divisive and inflammatory rhetoric with ethnic and religious undertones, targeting and singling out one constituent people, remains a disturbing reality. We cannot afford to forget the horrid history of this region. The conflict, including the infamous Srebrenica genocide that engulfed the region, did not begin with the first shot or the first atrocity. It started with words, dehumanizing hate speech and rhetoric aimed at deliberately stoking inter-ethnic fear and division, casting neighbors and fellow citizens as existential threats. Such divisive sentiments must never be allowed to take root again, and they deserve our unequivocal condemnation. The General Framework Agreement for Peace, coupled with the governance architecture, the country's constitution, and the constitutional and state institutions envisaged under this agreement, remain the cornerstone for peace, stability, and the well-being and progress of all constituent peoples in the country. We are therefore convinced that lasting peace, enduring stability, and sustained progress in development of all peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina can be best achieved by adhering to the fundamental principles enshrined in the Dayton Accord. We also recognize Bosnia's right to choose its own partnerships and a path towards integration in regional political and economic organizations as it deems fit. Pakistan enjoys warm and fraternal ties with Bosnia and Herzegovina and its people. We remain hopeful that the political leadership in the country would exercise prudence and act responsibly to find ways for engaging in a constructive and meaningful manner to settle the differences and to work cooperatively for the welfare of all the peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The burden and the opportunity both rest with the constituent peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina themselves, the Bosniaks, the Croats, and the Serbs alike. They must collectively reject divisive and dangerous narratives and promote dialogue, trust, harmony, and cooperation to build a future together in peace and shared dignity. I thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we note the participation in today's meeting of Denis Micevic, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The situation in BNH quite rightly remains a subject of close scrutiny of the Security Council of the United Nations, first and foremost in the context of the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace, which was endorsed by Security Council Resolution 1031. In the country, there serious inter-ethnic friction continues to worsen. The heart of these crisis phenomena is the reckless, risky policy of the Western countries to undermine Dayton enshrined architecture of the country, which stipulates the equality of the three constituent peoples, the two entities, with the broad-ranging constitutional authorities. Particularly stark was the destructive interference in Bosnian affairs by Berlin, London, and the Brussels bureaucrats. They have been leveraging blackmail and blatant threats to impose agendas that run counter to the interests of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We see a blatant desire to, at all costs, preserve control of external governance of the sovereign state of BNH. For the advancement of their egotistical designs, the West continuously sacrifices its long-standing international stabilization efforts for post-conflict resolution. There are persistent attempts to replace the Security Council endorsed Dayton framework with the Euro-Atlantic pseudo-values, with the smokescreen of so-called civilian Unitarianist, a concept to strip the peoples of BNH of their national identity, their collective rights, and any leverage to counter Western neocolonialist expansionism. Essentially, we see manipulation of those who had in the past been guarantors of Dayton, who assumed the obligation to facilitate implementation of the Dayton peace agreement. They're being manipulated to disrupt their tenuous balance of interests of Bosnia and Herzegovina parties. We see the egregious violations of the violation of the principle of consensus-based decision-making on the basis of, at the state level, on the basis of compromise between the Bosniaks, the Serbs, and the Croats. This is all generating resoundingly negative implications, not just for the domestic political landscape in the country, but also for the climate of good neighborly relations in the Western Balkans region as a whole. For those who are prone to forget, I wish to recall the fact that back in the 1990s, it was the Western egging on by certain political actors that resulted in Bosnia-Herzegovina unilateral action, which was a blatant disregard for the views of the Serbs of defending territorial integrity of Yugoslavia, and this set the stage for the outbreak of civil war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Unfortunately, the Serbs continue to be treated in this way today. A glaring example of this is the detention of a Serb general, Ratko Mladic, who has been languishing in the pretrial detention unit at The Hague. He is at death's door. We completely fail to understand why the Serb general cannot be granted early release for humanitarian reasons, or at the very least, why he cannot be transferred to Serbia to serve out the remainder of his sentence. We call upon the mechanism to finally take that decision. This would help to alleviate the immense suffering that he is enduring and the violations of the basic rights, which are enshrined in human rights protection treaties, the Nelson Mandela rules, the specific Security Council resolutions, as well as the mechanisms rules of procedure and evidence. If Mr. Mladic's condition continues to deteriorate, responsibility will lie squarely with the mechanism, which has long become atavistic and needs to be shuttered at the soonest. Another egregious example is the plight of Radovan Karadzic. The British authorities, with the collusion of the mechanism, have created inhumane detention conditions for him. Civic organizations have assessed this as amounting to physical and psychological terror by London. We call upon the membership of the Security Council to remember these two cases, especially when you hear Western colleagues wax poetic about humanism and the overriding need to respect human rights. Mr. President, to date, the main source of instability in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains the Office of the High Representative, which, from an international mediator designed to, according to Article 10 of Dayton, designed to facilitate implementation of the civilian aspects of the peace agreement, has transformed into a cudgel of the West with virtually unfettered leeway to interfere in the domestic affairs of B&H. As if to justify the need to preserve the external protectorate over the country, the OHR is meting out legal violence against the sovereign country and intends to continue to stoke domestic political unrest. The apotheosis here was the illegal so-called appointment to this post of the retired German politician, Mr. Schmidt, in breach of the procedures and international practice in circumvention of Security Council resolutions, and this resulted in the delegitimization of the OHR, as clearly shows the desire of the West to privatize the process of a Bosnian resolution by expelling those who disagree with its approaches from it, by creating an oversight platform in circumvention of the Security Council to monitor the situation in B&H in the spirit of the notorious rules-based order. Mr. Schmidt, with the support of those, among others, who we heard speak today, once again is attempting to hypocritically shift responsibility for the consequences of his destabilizing actions on Republika Srpska, attempting to blame Serbs and their leaders of all deadly sins, and striving to advance patriotically oriented. These are people who are trying to advance patriotically oriented, independent from foreign diktat policy through the Dayton Accord, the Dayton General Framework Agreement Accord. Mr. President, we demand that Western countries cease their intervention in domestic affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We insist on the immediate closure of the OHR. This is the very first necessary step towards stabilization of the situation in B&H. For the peoples in B&H, it is past time for them to gain genuine sovereignty and independence to themselves determine their future. The resolution to problems and friction needs to be resolved. Solutions need to be resolved through a wide-ranging, mutual respectful dialogue of the Bosnian parties themselves on the basis of the Dayton Accords. The recent statement of Mr. Schmidt to no longer honor us with his presence is something which we view as the right step in that direction. However, the problems that he has created will need to be remedied. In this context, we note the consistent policy of Bosnian Serbs in defense of Dayton architecture and its centralized structure. Banja Luka repeatedly proposed reasonable initiatives for the establishment of internal Bosnian dialogue, which is being torpedoed at the egging on of Western countries, and this is all clearly set out in the report of the government of Republika Srpska on the situation in BiH. We call upon the membership of the Security Council to closely read this document. We believe that Dayton remains the basis to which there is no alternative for post-conflict resolution in BiH. The achievement of robust and lasting international reconciliation is only possible on the Dayton international legal basis. The balanced system of checks and balances, which takes into account the interests of all three Bosnian parties, remains the only realistic way for their peaceful coexistence to be achieved and for non-discriminatory equality of states and equality of their status through the single state. Any attempts to distort the Dayton framework will have catastrophic consequences for BiH in the entire Western Balkans region. As for the Russian Federation, as one of the guarantors of Dayton, we intend to constructively engage in order to usher in a genuine post-conflict resolution in BiH. Thank you.
感谢俄罗斯代表。
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, President. We'd like to thank Christian Schmidt, High Representative, for his report and for his professional work. We also welcome His Excellency Denis Bečirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the delegations of Serbia, Croatia, and the European Union, who honor us today with their participation. More than 30 years after the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords, Panama considers it important to recognize that peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina endures amid political tensions and institutional challenges that deserve the attention of this Council. However, over the past year, polarization, institutional tensions, and the lack of coherence among different levels of government have given rise to separatist tendencies, which, rather than bringing political leaders together to work for the common good of Bosnia and Herzegovina, what they do is divide them and distance them from finding consensus, fueled by rhetoric based on political ends bordering on hatred and exclusion. For this reason, the stability of this country must not be taken for granted, as demonstrated by the presidential statement adopted by this Council on the 29th of December. Its elements remain not only fully relevant, but also demonstrate to the international community that important points of consensus among Council members still persist. In particular, we reiterate our firm commitment to the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as to the protection of its multi-ethnic nature. In this regard, we emphasize the importance of resolving differences through dialogue, frank dialogue, while avoiding actions that could erode the framework established by Dayton. In a context of widespread geopolitical volatility, the institutions and mechanisms created under the Dayton framework as a whole have demonstrated up until now their ability to preserve stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Likewise, we would highlight EUFOR Althea as an essential factor in maintaining peace among the communities. Its management continues to serve as an important guarantee for preventing a worsening of the security situation on the ground. Mr. President, with a view to the general elections scheduled for this year, we respectfully call upon all political forces, including the citizenry, to participate responsibly in a democratic spirit and in full respect for the rule of law. In this regard, particular attention must be paid to any rhetoric that minimizes or denies the Srebrenica genocide, as this not only dishonors the memory of the victims, but also obstructs reconciliation. My country firmly condemns this type of discourse. President, Panama reaffirms its strong support for the framework established by the Dayton Accords, as well as for the full implementation of the agenda of 5 goals and 2 conditions, the 5+2, as a central element for the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We also express our support for Bosnia and Herzegovina's path toward European integration, which represents an opportunity to promote reforms and consolidate lasting regional stability. Bosnia and Herzegovina has come a long way since Dayton. Whether that trajectory continues depends today more than ever before on the determination and capacity of its leaders to place the stability and the well-being of their people above any differences. Panama will continue to support this process with conviction and trusts that this Council will continue to give it the attention it deserves. In the light of the recent announcement made by the High Representative, the grounds for which we do not know, but we would like to thank him for his efforts and would like to extend to him our best wishes in his future endeavors and responsibilities. Likewise, we respectfully call upon the members of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council to redouble their efforts to reach consensus as soon as possible on the selection of a successor who enjoys the support of all its members, as well as that of the Security Council, hopefully, for the benefit of the legitimacy, stability, and institutional continuity in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Panama for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me at the outset to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Denis Bečirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and His Excellency, Mr. Christian Schmidt, the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I thank him for his briefing. Mr. President, last December, the Security Council adopted a presidential statement on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Agreement. In it, the Security Council reaffirmed its unwavering commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, and multi-ethnic character of Bosnia and Herzegovina, a stance fully supported by the Kingdom of Bahrain. In this regard, we wish to highlight the following points. 1. We stress the need for supporting political stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, strengthening state institutions, and encouraging dialogue among various parties. This must be done in accordance with the Dayton Agreement, which serves as the cornerstone of stability, thereby ensuring the preservation of peace gains and serving the Bosnian people across all their diverse segments and ethnicities. This should ensure that the country remains a sovereign state, bearing full responsibility for its policies, development, and economy, including the use of state property for development projects that serve public interest. 2. We warn against provocative rhetoric and unilateral actions that target the country's unity and constitutional order and that undermine the prospects for positive engagement among communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We emphasize the importance of curbing any conduct that reignites tensions and highlight the need for building bridges of cooperation among various segments of society. Political and religious leaders must play a pivotal role in combating extremism and incitement and in fostering social and political cohesion through various platforms, including the Interreligious Council. In this context, we welcome the observations contained in the Secretary-General's report, namely, that the people of Bosnia have endured decades of division, yet have frequently succeeded in moving the country forward. We reaffirm our steadfast commitment to all efforts that promote tolerance and coexistence, thereby bolstering peace and social stability and fostering a conducive environment for sustainable peace and mutual understanding at the national, regional, and international levels. 3. The Institute for Missing Persons in Bosnia and Herzegovina notes that 7,581 individuals remain unaccounted for. As of 2025, only 72 victims have been identified. The continued suffering of thousands of families following decades of violence and extremism necessitates the acceleration of international and regional efforts in coordination with neighboring states to encourage anyone with relevant information to come forward without delay. This would allow these families to finally find closure. 4. We underscore the pivotal role of the European Union force in Bosnia and Herzegovina, EUFOR Althea, in consolidating long-term stability, as well as its significant demining role mandated by the Security Council. We look forward to the renewal of the force's mandate this coming October. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Kingdom of Bahrain reiterates its full support for the international community's efforts to foster peace, stability, and development in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and emphasizes the importance of full respect for the country's national institutions. We stand ready to continue our constructive cooperation with all regional and international partners to preserve the unity and sovereignty of Bosnia and Herzegovina, thereby contributing to the prosperity of the Bosnian people and the wider Western Balkans region. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Bahrain. I now give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Mr. President, I wish to thank High Representative Christian Schmidt for his briefing and his latest report, and thank him for his dedicated engagement all these years. I also welcome the presence of His Excellency Mr. Denis Bečirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the representatives of Croatia, Serbia, and the European Union. Mr. President, Bosnia and Herzegovina's unity and political stability, with full respect for its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence, represents a major achievement and a hard-won gain for Bosnia and Herzegovina and the international community over the past 3 decades. This achievement must not be underestimated or called into question. The Dayton Peace Agreement remains the foundation of this achievement and needs to be preserved and respected by all sides. Greece will continue to support strong and effective democratic institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which contribute to the country's stability, cohesion, and development. Greece remains firmly committed to the Dayton Peace Agreement and to its institutions, including the Office of the High Representative. We look forward to the designation of a new High Representative by the Peace Implementation Council with a view to concluding the remaining objectives of the 5+2 agenda. We will also continue to unequivocally support the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of BiH. Political actors from all sides must demonstrate sincere willingness to promote meaningful and genuine dialogue guided by mutual respect, cooperation, and adherence to the rule of law. Moving away from decisive narratives and separatist rhetoric remains essential for strengthening trust and promoting reconciliation in BiH. In the run-up to the October 2026 general elections, we urge all parties to refrain from the decisive rhetoric or incitement of animosity. We stress the importance of conducting an electoral campaign and process that is competitive, free, fair, and democratic for the benefit of the country and its peoples. Mr. President, a renewed momentum in Bosnia and Herzegovina's EU accession process, firmly anchored in meaningful and substantial reforms, must be pursued by all political leaders in the country. The European Council's March 2024 decision to open accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina marked a pivotal moment. A sustained commitment by both entities to implementing reforms and advancing the accession process remains essential. Implementation of the reform agenda under the growth plan for the Western Balkans is crucial for unlocking benefits and continuous economic and social progress. We urge all political actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina to concentrate their efforts in promoting the necessary reforms and achieving tangible results for the benefit of all its citizens. 23 years ago, the adoption of the Thessaloniki Declaration affirmed the European perspective of the Western Balkans. That commitment was renewed in April this year with the adoption of the Delphi Declaration on the European integration of the Western Balkans, highlighting that the region remains firmly committed to the irreversible path towards EU accession. It is a recognition of the promotion of democratic values, peaceful coexistence, regional cooperation, good neighborly relations, stability, and shared prosperity. In addition, EU4 Althea is a tangible demonstration of the European Union's lasting commitment to the security of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the wider region. By contributing to maintaining a safe and stable environment, building trust, and strengthening unity. Greece has actively participated in Operation EU4 Althea since its inception and remains fully committed to supporting peace and security in the broader neighborhood. Mr. President, full respect of the Dayton Peace Agreement and institutional balance within the country, as well as effective cooperation in implementing reforms that help advance BiH EU's accession process, is what is needed today from all actors involved in order to ensure stability and economic development for Bosnia and Herzegovina and the wider region. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece. And I'll give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would like to thank the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for his briefing today and for his latest report. I'd also like to thank the Chair of the Presidency of BiH, Denis Bećirović, as well as the representatives of Croatia, Serbia, and the European Union. Last year marked the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement that ended a tragic war and upheld the peace in the country. Significant positive developments have taken place over the years, demonstrating the resilience of the people. However, the current reporting period highlights several worrying trends. Denmark is deeply concerned by the successionist policy and actions by the Republika Srpska leadership, as indicated in the report of the High Representative, alongside divisive and derogatory rhetoric based on ethnic and religious grounds. This kind of discourse is harmful, eroding trust, and risks weakening stability. We also note with deep concern reports of the normalization of glorification of convicted war criminals, including instances of genocide denial. We further notice reports of discrimination against returnees and a constrained environment for civil society and independent media, particularly in Republika Srpska. These trends are deeply troubling in light of the upcoming general elections scheduled for October 4th this year. In the lead up to the elections, we strongly urge political leaders from all parties to exercise restraint, avoid inflammatory rhetoric, and act in a constructive manner that strengthens public trust and social cohesion. Dialogue and willingness to pursue de-escalation and reconciliation are more important than ever. There's a growing need to strengthen unity, not to deepen division. In the context of the upcoming elections, we stress the need for timely preparations to safeguard the integrity of the electoral process and ensure free and fair elections, building on recent pilot projects. Mr. President, safeguarding the Dayton peace agreement also requires protecting the institutions it established. Over the past 30 years, these mechanisms have played a key role in supporting stability and progress. We would like to extend our strong support to the Office of the High Representative. The office plays a vital role in securing progress and stability in the country, as it has done since the end of the war. We take note of the decision by High Representative Schmidt to conclude his service as the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we thank him for his immense work throughout the years under the mandate of the Dayton Peace Agreement. It is now up to the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council to begin the process of finding his successor. We continue to support a fully empowered High Representative. The aim remains to implement the 5+2 agenda, which unfortunately has not happened yet. We'll look forward to the future without the need for international oversight and presence in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Strong and visionary political leadership and a willingness to seek the necessary compromises will help us move towards that goal. Denmark also commends EU4 Althea for its presence and vital role in ensuring a safe and secure environment. Mr. President, Bosnia and Herzegovina is part of the European family, and Denmark remains firmly committed to supporting its path towards EU membership. This should be a shared and unifying goal among all parties in the country. We call on political leaders for a strong and renewed commitment to advance necessary reforms. The people of Bosnia and Herzegovina will be the ones paying the price in case of another year of stalled reforms and inaction. We hope that 2026 will be a year of meaningful progress and greater unity. Mr. President, before ending, let me reaffirm Denmark's full support to the Dayton Peace Agreement and the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and constitutional order of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as its multi-ethnic character. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark. I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for his latest report and for his participation today. I would also like to welcome the Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Denis Bečirović, to the Chamber, as well as the representatives of Croatia, Serbia, and the European Union to today's meeting. Mr. President, after 3 decades, the Dayton Peace Agreement remains the cornerstone of reconciliation, peace, and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The institutions established under the agreement, including the Office of the High Representative, retain an important role in upholding all the success achieved and ensuring a path forward completion of the 5+2 agenda. We take note of the decision by the High Representative to conclude his mandate and wish to thank him for his commitment and dedicated service throughout his mandate. And we encourage a swift appointment of his fully empowered successor by the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council. We express our continued support for the Office of the High Representative in carrying out their mandate to uphold the principles and obligations of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Mr. President, despite significant achievements over these past decades, the report portrays a concerning trend that challenges the constitutional order and the rule of law in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Secessionist and inflammatory rhetoric introduces threats of instability and are deeply troubling. Such actions risk weakening democratic governance and undermining the hard-won progress achieved under the Dayton Peace Agreement. We call on all parties and all political leaders to refrain from divisive rhetoric and engage in dialogue and cooperation that build trust, stability, and democratic governance across the country. The continued efforts of EUFOR Althea are contributing to a safe and secure environment and supporting the authorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina in maintaining stability. The engagement of the international community remains essential to ensuring progress, unity, and the European perspective that the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina aspire to. Mr. President, Latvia reaffirms its strong support for Bosnia and Herzegovina's European perspective and encourages its leaders to advance the reforms necessary to make further progress on this path. We encourage all leaders to work together in a spirit of compromise and shared responsibility to advance the country's stability, unity, and long-term development for the benefit of all its citizens. With upcoming elections on the horizon, it is essential to ensure that the electoral process is conducted in a manner that is transparent, credible, inclusive, and fully consistent with international democratic standards. Introducing additional safeguard mechanisms to ensure election integrity and is critical to maintaining public trust. Free and fair elections are a cornerstone of democratic governance and are vital for the country's continued stability and development. And finally, Mr. President, let me conclude by reaffirming Latvia's strong commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and multi-ethnic character of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to supporting all its people in building a peaceful, stable, and prosperous future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Mr. President, I would like to thank the High Representative Christian Schmidt for his presentation and welcome the presence at this meeting of the Chair of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the representatives of Serbia, Croatia, and the European Union. My delegation also wishes to recognize the work carried out by the High Representative during his mandate, particularly the support provided by his office in the implementation of the Dayton Accords. Mr. President, following the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Accords last December, Colombia recognizes the efforts of Bosnia and Herzegovina to consolidate itself as a sovereign, democratic, and multi-ethnic country. In this regard, the growing tensions related to the increase in hate speech and divisive rhetoric are concerning as they weaken state institutions, erode constitutional mechanisms, and deepen divisions that undermine democratic governance. This is particularly worrying in light of the general elections to be held in the second half of this year, which we hope will proceed in a transparent and inclusive manner and in accordance with universal standards of equality and non-discrimination. Commitment to peace must be constant and it must be continuous. The Dayton Peace Agreement remains a solid framework for reconciliation, peace and stability, as well as for dialogue and understanding. It is essential to advance in its full implementation in an inclusive manner, responding to the country's current realities while respecting its sovereignty, territorial integrity and political independence. Colombia calls on the parties to foster dialogue and peaceful coexistence among the communities living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We understand the importance of combining political agreements, strong institutions, reconciliation, and social fabric building, truth and memory in order to consolidate sustainable peace. In this regard, strengthening the rule of law, together with broad participation by civil society and the full implementation of transitional justice measures are fundamental for a shared future. Likewise, preserving historical truth, rejecting denialism, and refraining from glorifying atrocious crimes of atrocity constitute essential pillars for preventing recurrence and consolidating genuine reconciliation. Investment in inclusion and intercommunal cohesion is an investment in the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina and contributes to preventing unilateral actions that could exacerbate tensions. We hope that the authorities of all the entities that make up the country will take steps in this direction. Previous reports by the High Representative have highlighted the constant departure of young people leaving the country due to the lack of opportunities and effective representation. Colombia hopes that action will be taken to ensure that youth are protected, empowered, and fully included in efforts towards lasting peace building and sustainable development, guaranteeing their full participation, responding to their needs, and preventing all forms of segregation in educational spaces. My delegation considers the role of all women in peacebuilding to be fundamental. In this regard, we look forward to learning about recent progress in the implementation of the Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. We urge the Office of the High Representative to deepen its gender-focused analysis through the presentation of information on gender-based violence and gender equality. This is especially concerning given that recent reports on the matter reveal structural disparities and setbacks in women's rights and gender equality, particularly in Republika Srpska. Mr. President, my country recognizes the important role of the international community in supporting the implementation of the 5+2 agenda in order to advance toward the full self-governance of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Accordingly, we support all initiatives for cooperation, regional integration, and good neighborly relations that strengthen democratic institutions. Finally, Colombia reaffirms its support for efforts aimed at preserving stability and peaceful coexistence in Bosnia and Herzegovina and its unity as a sovereign, democratic, and multi-ethnic country. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Colombia. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, we acknowledge Mr. Schmidt's contribution to today's meeting. We also welcome the participation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in particular His Excellency Mr. Petrovic, Chairman of the Presidency. We also acknowledge the participation of Serbia, Croatia, and the European Union in today's meeting. The Council's engagement on Bosnia and Herzegovina reflects our shared commitment to peace and stability in the Western Balkans. While we recognize the progress achieved since the Dayton Peace Agreement 30 years ago, we remain mindful that lasting peace requires continued effort and political will from all stakeholders. Recent developments present both opportunities and challenges. Although the reporting period has been marked by political and structural challenges requiring our collective attention, we note the relative de-escalation of political tension in recent months and the steps taken to address disputes. These developments demonstrate that progress is possible when dialogue and diplomacy are prioritized. Furthermore, the recent extension of the EU-led Stabilization Force mandate, EU4 Althea, signals ongoing international support and continues to play a positive role in maintaining an environment conducive to dialogue and development. Mr. President, it's essential that this momentum is preserved and translated into sustainable long-term stability. In this regard, my delegation highlights the following. First, supporting the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace, which remains basis for stability and cornerstone for peace. Second, experience has shown that inclusive dialogue and consensus building are vital for sustainable peace. Sustainable solutions require locally driven consensus among all stakeholders, strengthen state institutions, and meaningful reforms for the benefit of all citizens. We urge all parties to use existing constitutional frameworks, engage constructively on shared priorities, especially economic development and social cohesion, and promote inclusive dialogue that fosters national reconciliation. Third, Bosnia and Herzegovina's advancement toward European integration demonstrates the potential for positive transformation and offers a foundation for continued cooperation. It's essential for the international community to maintain its facilitation and constructive support for Bosnia and Herzegovina development path, including its European aspirations. Finally, in light of Mr. Schmidt's decision to step down, we believe this juncture presents an appropriate opportunity for a comprehensive review of the role of the High Representative with the view to ensuring that it continues to serve the best interests of Bosnia and Herzegovina. At the same time, we reaffirm our view that the process of selecting the High Representative should remain consistent with established practice, including its conduct within the Peace Implementation Council Steering Board, as the body formally mandated to implement the Dayton Peace Agreement. We also emphasize the importance of comprehensive consultation among all PIC Steering Board members in the appointment process. Mr. President, to conclude, we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Somalia is committed to working with all parties toward all efforts that promote peaceful, inclusive, and multi-ethnic society in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are confident that through engagement and renewed respect for the General Framework Agreement for Peace, positive outcomes can be achieved for all communities and the wider region. I thank you.
感谢。
I thank the representative of Somalia. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wish to welcome the presence among us of the Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Denis Bećirović, and I would like to welcome the High Representative, the Permanent Representative of the European Union and representatives of Serbia and Croatia. I also wish to thank the High Representative, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for his briefing and for the important information he shared. This shows 30 years after the signing of the Dayton and Paris agreements, which ended the war, that the path remains long when it comes to the achievement of a stable and prosperous Bosnia and Herzegovina. France was a witness to the agreements. We are fully committed with our partners to the territorial integrity, sovereignty, political independence, and stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. These principles are vital. Casting doubt upon them through nationalist rhetoric or separatist threats is not acceptable. Mr. President, France supports all of the efforts of Bosnia and Herzegovina to make progress through the necessary reforms on the path towards accession to the European Union. This was opened nearly 2 years ago with the sovereign choice of the people and of the country and with the support of the people. France firmly believes that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as that of all of the Western Balkans, lies with the European Union. That is the hope of the youth of that nation and the direction of the arc of history. This was the message that was recalled by the President of the Republic when he hosted on 29 October last in Paris the 3 members of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the presence of the European Commissioner responsible for enlargement, Madam Marta Kos. We call upon all political actors in BNH not to yield to the temptation to obstruct, but rather to redouble efforts in initiating reforms for the benefit of the people. The international presence in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains necessary to provide for the stability of the country and the region. The European EUFOR Althea operation has since 2004 played a vital role in this regard. When it comes to the civilian aspects of the Dayton Paris agreements, we wish to reaffirm our support for the Office of the High Representative, which carries out critical responsibility in the implementation of the peace accords. We have taken note of the decision of Mr. Christian Schmidt to resign as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina after 5 years of unstinting commitment to the implementation of the Dayton Paris agreements. I wish to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Schmidt for the work that he has done and to extend our deepest gratitude. In 2008, the goals of the reforms enshrined in the 5+2 agenda were adopted and determine the development and evolution of the role of the Office of the High Representative. Our hope is that these goals can be achieved at the soonest, and it is indeed the commitment of the leaders of B&H to the reform process that can help to achieve that. The question of the succession of Mr. Schmidt will be discussed during the forthcoming meeting of the Peace Implementation Council on the 3rd and the 4th of June next in Sarajevo. Bosnia and Herzegovina will conduct elections in October. This will be an important exercise in democracy. It is of critical importance for the elections to be held in free, equitable, transparent conditions, buttressed by meaningful progress in terms of electoral integrity. Bosnia and Herzegovina can count on France's support and that of our partners in their path towards Europe. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of China. I welcome the attendance of His Excellency Mr. Denis Bechirovich, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, at this meeting. I also welcome the representatives of Serbia, Croatia, and the European Union. Bosnia and Herzegovina is an important country in the Balkans, one that has suffered the ravages of war, with the people yearning for peace and prosperity. Mutual support and harmonious coexistence among all ethnic groups is conducive to the country's stable development, which aligns with the common expectations of the international community. In light of the latest developments, I would like to share the following points. First, it is important to achieve political stability as soon as possible. For some time, the political situation has remained volatile. Constant disputes between different ethnic groups and political parties have severely impacted its internal stability and economic development agenda. This year, Bosnia and Herzegovina will hold general elections, which will determine the trajectory of this country and the wider Balkans for a foreseeable future. China hopes that the two entities, the three constituent peoples, and all political parties will maintain calm and restraint, show mutual tolerance, and foster a stable and enabling political atmosphere to ensure the smooth and peaceful conduct of the elections. Second, ethnic reconciliation must be firmly advanced. Ethnic relations in the Balkans are highly complex and convoluted, and the 1995 Dayton Peace Agreement has genuinely played a key role in promoting harmonious coexistence among all groups. China looks forward to lasting peace and long-term stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, supports all parties in resolving their differences through political negotiations, and we hope that the three peoples can live in harmony and greater mutual trust to achieve inclusive reconciliation. Allowing confrontation and antagonism to intensify and the situation to deteriorate or even escalate will ultimately harm the interests of people of all ethnic groups. Third, efforts must be made to promote sustainable development. Over the past few years, against the backdrop of political turbulence, Bosnia and Herzegovina has faced severe challenges such as slow economic growth, rising inflation, and labor drain. We hope that all parties in Bosnia and Herzegovina will prioritize the interests of the entire population, forge a synergy in governance, and create a favorable environment for rapid economic development and for the people to live secure and happy lives. We also call upon increased international support and assistance to the country to enable greater investment cooperation in areas that secure people's livelihoods, thereby advancing the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Fourth, it is essential to uphold the principle of non-interference in internal affairs. The destiny of Bosnia and Herzegovina should be in the hands of its own people, and its affairs should be independently decided upon and managed by the people. China notes Mr. Schmidt's announcement that he will resign from the post of High Representative. Our position on this issue remains unchanged. Mr. Schmidt's appointment was not endorsed by the Security Council. Both the institution of the High Representative and the Bonn powers are special arrangements for a special period. They should not be prolonged, much less made permanent. China's position on the issue of Bosnia and Herzegovina is consistent and clear. We respect its national sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, as well as the independent choices made by its people regarding the future of their country. China remains committed to developing friendly relations with people of all ethnic groups in Bosnia and Herzegovina, supporting its ethnic reconciliation process and playing a constructive role in maintaining peace and stability in the country and tranquility in the wider region. I now resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Denis Bećirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Respected Chairman, esteemed Excellencies, at the beginning of my address, I take the opportunity to greet the Chairman of the United Nations Security Council, the esteemed ambassadors of the United Nations Security Council member states and other ambassadors, as well as Mr. Christian Schmidt, High Representative of the international community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. From the report of the High Representative, it can be observed that the political and security situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina is complex and challenging. This document additionally confirms the importance of continuous attention by international community with the aim of protecting peace, stability, and the general framework agreement for peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ladies and gentlemen, despite numerous challenges, Bosnia and Herzegovina has achieved significant progress on the European and Euro-Atlantic path. The European Council on 15 December 2022 decided to grant Bosnia and Herzegovina candidate status for membership in the European Union. The European Council on 21 March 2024 adopted a decision to open accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have adopted and submitted 6 reform programs of Bosnia and Herzegovina to the NATO headquarters in Brussels, and preparations are underway for the adoption of this document for 2026. Bosnia and Herzegovina has fulfilled the conditions to receive an invitation for membership in NATO. Our results would have been even better if there had not been constant obstructions and blockades from the entity Republika Srpska. With the aim of an objective understanding of the current situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is necessary to point to the facts that preceded the present state. I particularly emphasize the following. The Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, a UN member state, was a victim of brutal aggression from 1992 to 1995. Joint criminal enterprises were carried out against the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Genocide was committed against Bosniaks, the only genocide in Europe after the Second World War. Great state protagonists are attempting, even in the post-Dayton period, to realize the objectives that were not achieved during the armed aggression. Ignoring these facts, also confirmed by the judgments of UN courts, does not help anyone. On the contrary, their neglect can lead to an incorrect diagnosis of the situation and thereafter also to possible new wrong steps. This must not be allowed. Ladies and gentlemen, a very difficult year 2025 is behind us. The anti-Dayton policy of the leadership of the entity Republika Srpska brought Bosnia and Herzegovina to the brink of armed conflict. The worst scenario was avoided thanks to institutional and responsible action in the legal and foreign policy domains. Also, we have learned one important lesson. Any endangerment of the position and competencies of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, state judicial institutions, and the High Representative could have unforeseeable consequences for peace and stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina and this part of Europe. I particularly wish to warn of the danger of undermining the role of the High Representative. The High Representative exists on the basis of Annex 10 of the Dayton Peace Agreement, and he is the final interpreter of the civilian aspect of the agreement. The signatories and witnesses of the Dayton Peace Agreement knew already at the end of 1995 that this is an important institution for the protection of this international agreement. They knew that the overall agreement could not function without Annex 10. The Dayton Peace Agreement is not a menu from which you choose what you want and what you do not want. It is an international agreement that must be respected in its entirety. The forthcoming appointment of a new High Representative should be carried out in a manner that, as has been the case until now, the Peace Implementation Council appoints the new High Representative. The competencies and mandate of the High Representative are not jeopardized. The closure of the office of the High Representative can be discussed only after the 5+2 program has been fulfilled. To conclude, the problem of Bosnia and Herzegovina is not High Representative, but rather the anti-Dayton policy that openly advocates the destruction of the Dayton Peace Agreement and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be completely clear and bold. It is the leadership of the Republika Srpska entity and not the High Representative that is destroying the Dayton Peace Agreement. It is time to stop those destroying the agreement and not weaken the institutions protecting it. Neighboring countries, the Republic of Serbia and the Republic of Croatia, do not have the right to interfere in the internal matters of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. They are not guarantors, but signatories of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Therefore, Serbia and Croatia have assumed an additional international obligation to respect the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the judgments of UN courts. It is exceptionally important that all members of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council, on the occasion of the marking the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement, emphasize the importance of respecting the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and constitutional order of Bosnia and Herzegovina. On that occasion, the members of the steering board particularly emphasized that Bosnia and Herzegovina was not created in 1995, but continued its legal existence. Sovereignty exclusively belongs to Bosnia and Herzegovina as a single country. The entities exist on the basis of the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina and do not have their own sovereignty. The leadership of the entity Republika Srpska continues to endanger the Dayton Peace Agreement. They publicly advocate for unilateral dismantling of the Dayton Peace Agreement, destruction of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and other violations of international and national law. Ladies and gentlemen, it is scandalous that the leadership of the Republika Srpska entity concluded a contract with a lobbying firm with the aim of dismantling the Dayton Peace Agreement. In this contract, the main objectives are stated as change of the foreign policy of the United States of America towards Bosnia and Herzegovina, redefining the status of the Republika Srpska entity, securing international support for secession, and contesting the fundamental parts of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Such anti-Dayton policy directly endangers peace and stability in the entire region. This dangerous policy is also demonstrated by the so-called report that was submitted illegally to the UN Security Council by the government of the entity Republika Srpska. The mentioned report, except falsehoods, also contains elements of propaganda of the kind we witnessed prior to the genocide against Bosniaks. I will be clear. This is the renewed activation of genocidal propaganda. Politicians who celebrate convicted war criminals are attempting once again to turn the victim into a target for a new genocide. This is unacceptable, disgraceful, and extremely dangerous. Destructive political forces are attempting to create dangerous ethnic divisions, including the creation of the so-called third entity. Such unreasonable policies caused enormous evil during the 1990s and must be cut off at the root, as they may again cause conflicts and suffering. Recently, a gathering was held in Zagreb at which maps of ethnic divisions in Bosnia and Herzegovina were once again drawn. Therefore, here in the United Nations Security Council, I wish to be very clear. Advocating ethnic divisions in Bosnia and Herzegovina is not a policy. It is a direct threat to peace. History teaches us that whenever maps of the partition of Bosnia and Herzegovina were drawn in Belgrade and Zagreb, the citizens and peoples of my country suffered. It is our common duty and responsibility never again to allow the drawing of borders along open wounds. The citizens and peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina deserve peace, stability, and economic progress. One of the frequent political deceptions of anti-Dayton forces is the creation of fear of unitarism in Bosnia and Herzegovina. To speak about the danger of unitarism and centralism in a deeply decentralized Bosnia and Herzegovina is completely meaningless. Intimidation with alleged unitarism has the aim to shift attention away from the real problems of Bosnia and Herzegovina, deepen ethno-nationalist attempts of paralysis of state institutions, and sabotage Euro-Atlantic and European integration processes. Therefore, also here at the session of the United Nations Security Council, it should be clearly stated that this is a political narrative of great state protagonists. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm not addressing you only as the chairman of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also as the voice of millions of people from Bosnia and Herzegovina who believe in the future. Our future is not based on divisions, but on knowledge, innovations, and the dignity of every person. My vision of Bosnia and Herzegovina is a stable, secure, educated, and digitally developed European country, a society of shared values, sustainable development, and strong institutions. What should be done in Bosnia and Herzegovina? First, according to the international and national law, as well as according to the final and binding judgments of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, state property is the property of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. There must be no political bargaining on this matter. Second, it is necessary to proceed with the implementation of the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. In that process, it is necessary to strengthen the democratic and multi-ethnic country of Bosnia and Herzegovina and eliminate every form of discrimination of citizens. Third, the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina clearly defines the supremacy of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina over the entities. In that context, the message of the members of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council is also important, that the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina must be fully respected and that it has precedence over entity constitutions and laws. Fourth, I consider that it is important that the UN Security Council in 2026 also adopts the decision on the extension of the mandate of EUFOR Althea. The presence of EUFOR is important for the preservation of peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in the region. Fifth, for the stability and security of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is important to dynamize the path of Bosnia and Herzegovina towards full membership in NATO and the European Union. Sixth, it is high time that the international community and the High Representative put a stop to anti-Dayton attempts to endanger the state institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. For example, it is important to prevent attempts from the entity Republika Srpska to shut down the public broadcasting service of Bosnia and Herzegovina as an independent broadcaster at the level of the state. Finally, on behalf of the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, I sincerely thank the friends of our country. We have not forgotten the assistance we received from many UN member states. Bosnia and Herzegovina appreciates this and does not forget it. Let us preserve together peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region. Thank you for your attention.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Bečirović for his statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, head of the delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to begin by acknowledging the presence of the Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I also take note of Mr. Christian Schmidt's intention to step down as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. I thank him for his dedicated service over the past 5 years, and I also thank him for his important briefing today. I also wish to stress that it is the task of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council to appoint a successor to the High Representative. Chair, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the European Union. I note that the commitment of the Bosnia and Herzegovina political leadership brought tangible results and contributed to the March 2024 European Council decision to open accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I also note with regret that this reform dynamic has since stalled. The European Union urges all political actors to renew the country's focus on progressing on the EU path, taking resolute actions to implement the necessary reforms. The sovereignty, territorial integrity, constitutional order, including constitutional court decisions, and international personality of Bosnia and Herzegovina need to be respected. Chair, EU4Althea continues to play a key role in supporting the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina in maintaining a safe and secure environment for all citizens. The European Union reiterates the importance of continued cooperation among international actors and expresses support to the mission of the High Representative and his office towards fulfilling the 5+2 agenda. In closing, I reiterate the EU's unequivocal commitment to Bosnia and Herzegovina's EU perspective as a single, united and sovereign country. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Lambrinidis for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Serbia.
Mr. President, at the outset, allow me to congratulate you on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month and to wish you every success in the discharge of your duties. If there is one constant that should guide our deliberations in this august body, it is not the reports before us, but the principles that guide our position. Reports may change from cycle to cycle, but principles should not. In that spirit, following our recent consideration of the Secretary General's report on AMNIC and the situation in Kosovo and Metohija, Serbia confirms once again its unwavering commitment to sovereignty and territorial integrity as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. Thus, allow me to reiterate what we stated at the previous meeting on this matter. Serbia reaffirms its consistent and principled position of respect for the territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina in accordance with the Dayton Peace Agreement, which remains the cornerstone of peace, stability, and constitutional order in the country. Nearly 3 decades after its conclusion, the Dayton Agreement continues to provide a carefully balanced framework that reflects the realities of Bosnia and Herzegovina's internal structure. Its consistent and good faith implementation in all its aspects remains essential for preserving stability and ensuring the effective functioning of institutions. In this regard, Serbia underscores that sustainable progress can only be achieved through full respect for the constitutional competencies of both entities and the equality of the 3 constituent peoples as enshrined in the agreement. The Dayton Agreement can and should be implemented more effectively, but it cannot be redefined without the consent of all. As a country located in the heart of the Balkans, we are deeply aware of the role and responsibility. In the interest of preserving regional stability, we have often chosen restraint in responding to actions and rhetoric that could have further deepened divisions, believing that the Balkans should move toward cooperation and economic progress instead of recurring tensions. We strive for a region where young people want to stay and create, where tourists arrive and investors invest. This potential exists. It just needs to be seized by joint forces. Our positions do not always have to be the same, but we can better valorize what we agree on and resolve matters where our views diverge on basis of compromise, mutual respect, and in good faith. Serbia has always extended a hand in the spirit of regional peace and cooperation, while reminding that the success of such an approach requires of the goodwill of all parties. If we look at the domestic dynamics in Bosnia and Herzegovina over the years, the lessons learned so far should be clear. There is no way forward through continued attempts to impose politically biased interpretations of the constitutional framework. The issue is not centralization versus decentralization, nor functionality versus protection. What is needed is precisely what the Dayton Peace Agreement has already prescribed: constitutional balance and functionality through consent. In fact, the current political tensions in Bosnia and Herzegovina further demonstrate the importance of avoiding approaches that reinforce competing political narratives from the outside. Instead, focus should be renewed on fostering an environment conducive to constructive internal dialogue. As long as domestic actors rely on the expectations or practice of international intervention to resolve political disputes, incentives for compromise tend to diminish. Moreover, political accountability shifts away from those who should bear it. In that sense, strengthening local ownership and the responsibility of domestic actors is not only a democratic principle, but also a functional prerequisite for long-term stability and sustainable political development. Serbia believes that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies in the hands of its legitimate domestic actors. Dialogue, compromise, and mutual understanding among them are indispensable. Measures that are not rooted in consensus risk deepening divisions and undermining the very stability they seek to preserve. We share the view that lasting outcomes must be shaped locally, led by domestic actors, with international engagement focused on support rather than direction. The goal remains the same: a democratic, peaceful, and prosperous Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mr. President, Serbia firmly supports the European integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This process represents a shared objective within the country. It is also a shared regional objective and unifying framework for long-term stability and prosperity in the Balkans. We see this path as fully compatible with the Dayton framework. Progress is that regard should be pursued through dialogue and agreement in a way that reinforces rather than redefines the constitutional balance. Mr. President, Serbia attaches particular importance to regional stability and good neighborly relations. We remain fully committed to further strengthening cooperation with Bosnia and Herzegovina in all areas of mutual interest, including economic development, infrastructure connectivity, and people-to-people ties. Such cooperation contributes not only to bilateral relations, but also to the broader stability and prosperity of the Western Balkans. In the words of President Vučić in the UN General Assembly, we shall not hesitate in our resolve to promote regional stability in an effort to contribute to global security. In doing so, we will continue to be guided by the principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law, which remain the foundation for addressing complex political issues in a responsible and balanced manner. The peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region deserve a future shaped less by political theatrics and mutual recriminations, and more by dialogue, economic cooperation, and responsible leadership. Serbia remains committed to such a future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Serbia. I now give the floor to the representative of Serbia. Croatia. Thank you.
President, Croatia reiterates its firm support for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, constitutional order, and international personality of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as established by the Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement. We welcome High Representative Christian Schmidt and remain committed to cooperation with the Office of the High Representative and the Stabilization Force, EUFOR-Althea. We take note of Mr. Schmidt's intention to step down as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina and thank him for his commitment over the past 5 years to assist the country in addressing its long-standing and persistent challenges. We also welcome the participation of High Representative Schmidt in today's meeting as an opportunity to offer more granularity on the views and concerns expressed by Croats as constituent people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, providing context on how and why certain long-standing issues, including those related to electoral reform and to political representation, emerged in the political debate and why they persist, would contribute to a better understanding of the broader institutional and constitutional dynamics within Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mr. President, the Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement remains the cornerstone of peace, institutional balance, and democratic power sharing in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Its principles, including the constitutional equality of the three constituent peoples, Croats, Bosniaks, and Serbs, and the democratic rights of all citizens must be fully respected. Croatia opposes all policies and rhetoric that undermine the Dayton framework, whether through secessionist initiatives or attempts at political centralization, inconsistent with the constitutional framework established by the Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement. Both deepen divisions, weaken institutional trust, and hinder the country's European path. Croatia remains Bosnia and Herzegovina's strongest advocate on its path towards the European Union, while also contributing to its resilience, security, and connectivity through strategic infrastructure and energy diversification projects, including the Southern Gas Interconnection, which is of major strategic importance for the country's long-term energy security and independence. In the current geopolitical circumstances, strengthening Bosnia and Herzegovina's European integration, energy resilience, and regional connectivity represents an important contribution to long-term peace, stability, and economic development in Southeastern Europe. We particularly commend the constructive role by the Council of Ministers Chairwoman Ms. Borjana Kristo in advancing the European reform agenda, and welcome the opening of EU accession negotiations, which demonstrated that progress is possible when dialogue, compromise, and institutional cooperation prevail. This momentum must now be used to advance key reforms, particularly in the areas of the rule of law, institutional functionality, and electoral legislation. Electoral reform remains essential not only for strengthening the integrity and transparency of elections, but also for ensuring legitimate political representation of the constituent peoples, in line with the constitutional framework of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the relevant decisions of its constitutional court. The current system continues to allow the election of representatives without the support of the community they are meant to represent, which undermines trust and political stability. With the 2026 general elections approaching, it is essential to preserve equality among constituent peoples and non-discrimination of citizens, refrain from divisive rhetoric, and strengthen conditions for constructive political dialogue and reconciliation. Mr. President, at a time of growing geopolitical uncertainty, Bosnia and Herzegovina's European integration is also a matter of broader regional stability and security. Croatia will therefore continue to support all efforts aimed at a stable, democratic, and prosperous Bosnia and Herzegovina, founded on the Dayton framework, institutional legitimacy, constitutional equality, and genuine partnership amongst its three constituent peoples and citizens. Now, Mr. President, we regret that Mr. Bečirović used this important platform in a very important moment at the Security Council to kick off his election campaign. And I apologize to the Council, but I do need to offer a response. When it comes to a conference that he mentioned, organized by civil society and the American Heritage Foundation in Zagreb, it is not something that the government of Croatia could or indeed should prohibit. Their deliberations and conclusions, if they had any, are their own. When it comes to accusations of interference, we firmly reject any implication that the Republic of Croatia interferes in the internal affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As Bosnia and Herzegovina's closest EU neighbor, with which we share 1,000-kilometer land border, Croatia has a strong and legitimate interest in seeing the country advance on its European path and develop into a stable and prosperous society. In that spirit, we continue to provide consistent diplomatic and expert support to Bosnia and Herzegovina's reform and integration efforts. Our bilateral cooperation is extensive and constructive. Economic ties between our countries are strong, while numerous joint infrastructure and development projects, including the construction of new bridges and transport links and recently agreed southern gas interconnection, reflect the depth and the determination of our partnership. The joint sessions of our two governments further demonstrate exceptionally high level of cooperation and mutual commitment. Such engagement fully respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina and should be viewed as a contribution to regional stability and good neighborly relations. Croatia's primary concern and interest is the equality of Croats as one of the three constituent peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Croatia's care for its citizens living in Bosnia and Herzegovina is fully consistent with international law and the Croatian Constitution. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Croatia for their statement. The representative of Serbia has asked for the floor once again. I'll give the floor to him.
Mr. President, we heard a clearly one-sided and politically charged narrative presented here today. Ironically, those who portray themselves as the principal defenders of Bosnia and Herzegovina continue to employ biased rhetoric and pursue internally unilateral agendas that speak loudly about the underlying problems, which evidently cannot be reduced solely to the accusations directed at Republika Srpska. We have also noted repeated allegations directed against Serbia. Serbia rejects claims that its position contributes to destabilization in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Serbia neither interferes nor seeks to interfere in the internal affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Our interest is stability, dialogue, and full respect for the Dayton Peace Agreement, to which Serbia is a signatory and, as such, one of the guarantors. This kind of provocative statements does not contribute to the atmosphere of trust, dialogue, and regional cooperation that remains essential for all of us in the Western Balkans. Serbia opposes inflammatory rhetoric and unilateral actions inconsistent with the Dayton Peace Agreement, and calls on all actors involved in political processes in Bosnia and Herzegovina to act with restraint, responsibility, and full respect for the delicate constitutional balance established by Dayton. Political differences should not be addressed through public confrontation or accusatory rhetoric. They must be resolved through dialogue, diplomacy, and mutual respect. We are fully aware that, particularly in periods of heightened political campaigning, rhetoric directed against neighbors may bring short-term political benefit. Yet, lasting stability can only be built by strengthening trust, reducing tensions, and fostering a spirit of cooperation across the region. Serbia supports a comprehensive and enduring relationship of good neighborliness, not because it is expected by others, but because we are deeply convinced that it is in our shared interest. Simply put, our future cannot be built without one another.
I thank the representative of Serbia. The representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina asked to make yet another statement. I give the floor to the representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, first, we regret that any mentioning of election process that is in front of us and claiming that we are, Mr. President Bečirović is interfering in election process by misusing this table and this honorable event is more than regrettable, and I won't say further. Instead of going into details, I just want to call my colleagues. What Mr. President Bečirović was talking about is actually the event that distinguished colleague is mentioning, in which, with presence of his colleague, Special Envoy of Minister of Foreign Affairs, this map was basically speaking produced. Map of division of the country along ethnic lines, where you see Croatian, Serbian Republic, and Bosniak Muslim Republic, which is something that our ministry strongly condemned, and you're familiar with it. And for my dear colleague on my right side, I just reiterate, we need you to actually stop implementing the slow motion destruction of Dayton Peace Accord and the slow motion secession of the country by implementing the document that you officially adopted by the governments and institutions of Republika Srpska and Serbia. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.